I almost inherited this dream coming to US and doing a PhD in one of the top universities and becoming a professor. I valued learning more than exam taking. My GRE score was terrible. And the only reason I made it into UT Austin was because I had Best B.Tech Project Award in my undergrad. Professor Adnan Aziz was from IIT Kanpur. So I know this is an indicator of good research. I should invest in this kid.
What did you do at Google?
In those days, Google's revenue was around 10 billion and 7 billion flew through my models. And if we were able to get that 2% increase, added on top of Google's revenue for perpetuity.
Why ThoughtSpot?
I think this search-based experience was so new, so different from anything else that people had seen. The literal response was our jaws are on the floor. We had optimized our database to be so good and so fast that you could scan 1 billion rows and come back in 50 to 100 milliseconds.
What problem are you looking to solve through AmpUp?
70% of the revenue is generated by top 30% of salespeople. So imagine if you can uplift the rest of the 70% to the same level. You're talking about 2 to 3x gain in revenue. That's kind of the high-level idea behind AmpUp.
What excites you the most about the tech ecosystem in India?
Today, there's so many amazing systems companies coming out of India. There's so many successful American companies have their engineering being done over there. And there's been a decade of mentoring and training and building a network of experts that has completely leveled the playing field. That's really, really exciting.
This guy helps move billions at Google, literally. Meet Amit Prakash from IIT Kanpur to UT Austin PhD. He was in Microsoft's early search team. At Google, his model influenced most ad revenue. Then he co-founded ThoughtSpot, search your data like Google, built it into a 4 billion plus company. Now he's building AmpUp.ai that turns every salesperson into top 1%. Today we talk how to build real products, sell them, and why India's tech talent is about to explode. Now I bring you Amit. Amit, finally. So good to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me.
Amit, I want to start from the beginning. We are really a byproduct of our environment. What really shaped you the most while growing up in India?
That's an interesting question. So my dad was actually a professor of civil engineering in India, and he came to Purdue in 1976, the year I was born. To do his PhD, but he got really sick and he had to go back. And finally, he finished his PhD 20 years later in India. But I almost inherited this dream of doing well in academics and then coming to US and doing a PhD in one of the top universities and becoming a professor, which was my dad's dream. And it wasn't enforced or anything. It was just I grew up in an environment where that's what was celebrated. And I felt like if I did that, that would be amazing. So that's what shaped most of my childhood.
Got it. And you landed, how did you land at IIT Kanpur, and what was the journey from Kanpur to University of Texas doing your PhD?
Yeah, so again, my father had done his master's at IIT Kanpur, and this was another thing that was talked about in our household, is that that's the epitome of where you can get academically if you can get into IIT Kanpur. So a lot of my schooling was me skipping class and just preparing for JEE. And I enjoyed that process a lot more than regular school anyways. So that was kind of my path into IIT.
Got it. And did you apply to colleges other than University of Texas, or that was the only place you wanted to be in?
So that was an interesting part of my life where I valued learning more than exam taking. And so on one hand, most of my friends, when there was a hard concept, they'll come and talk to me about it, and they'll I'll help them understand it. But on the other hand, my grades were not great. And particularly in those days, GRE score was an important aspect. And my GRE score was terrible. So I really struggled to get into a good university. And the only reason I made it into UT Austin was because one of the professors there was from IIT Kanpur, and he had won the best B.Tech project award in his undergrad. and I had best B.Tech project award in my undergrad. So like, I should invest in this kid.
Mhm.
Because I know this is an indicator of good research to come. So he supported me, Professor Adnan Aziz. And if he hadn't supported me, I don't know if I would have actually achieved my dream of doing a PhD in one of the universities in US.
Got it. And Amit, look, you wanted to become a professor, and looks like destiny had something else for you. You
Yeah,
got
yeah,
into tech. How did that happen? And I think your first job was at Microsoft.
yeah, yeah. So at the end of my PhD, I felt like I started with a very practical problem. Like that was kind of the dot-com era, and the network bandwidth was doubling every year or so. And so I came up with some new ideas on algorithms and architecture to remove the bottlenecks in internet routers by almost 10x or 100x or so.
Mhm.
And I had beautiful publications, but at the end of my PhD, I realized that like there were very elegant algorithms with like log star and bound and things like that. But the parts of it was so impractical that it was never going to be implemented in a commercial solution. And that was disheartening for me. So I said, I don't want to jump from one academic research institution to another. I'm just going to uh, go to industry, spend a year or two, and learn a little bit more about building practical solutions, harvest some problems from there, and go back to university.
Mhm.
And the charm for me was to go to Microsoft because they were just beginning the search engine team. And they said you could come and work with Microsoft Research and continue to publish as well as contribute in this brand new effort, which was very ambitious for Microsoft in those days to go and compete with Google. So I ended up there, and as luck would have it, I even got to work with John Hopcroft, who is one of the Turing Award winners, who was visiting MSR. Uh, but I, somewhere in there, I started enjoying working in industry at scale more. And then I ended up moving to Google on CMU campus. And that was best of both worlds for me. Because I was on an academic campus, I was advising some PhD students, but I was working on these machine learning AI problems that were 2 orders of magnitude larger than anything else happening in the world at the time. Google had this tremendous scale, and academics couldn't even do anything at that scale. And in my work, when I was advising PhD student, I was seeing that it was again kind of more of an academic gamesmanship of like, I have this idea, I published this paper, somebody rejected it. Now, what do I do to get it published somewhere else? That was sucking more energy than actual work. And so I was like, I think I'm going to enjoy industry more than academics. And that's when I decided that I'm going to stay in industry.
Yeah. Amit, for the audience, in simple language, what did you do at Microsoft and then at Google? And what did you master the most at both the places?
What did I master the most?
Yeah, or what did you like? What were your biggest learnings there?
Yeah, yeah. So at Microsoft, I was responsible for ranking the web search results. And the ranking was split into two parts. So part of the ranking happened before the user query came, and we used to call it static ranking. And so this is like how authoritative this page is and how much do we trust the result? What's the quality of the content there? And then the other part was dynamic ranking when the query comes and you're mapping page to the query. So I was responsible for the static ranking part, and this included like figuring out spam, figuring out things in the style of page rank, authoritative score of the page, and things like that. And this was an era when Microsoft was really behind on technology. Um, so it was really hard to do any compute at web scale at Microsoft. So like while Google was publishing paper on MapReduce and stuff, we were stitching together 200 Windows servers and somehow making them coordinate with each other. And if something went wrong, like a day worth of compute will get lost. And so I worked on a lot of systems problems actually initially to make this whole system stable. And then I worked with Microsoft research folks to introduce neural nets in search ranking, which was really, really early. So this was the rank. This was, I forget the name of the paper, but we were the first ones to introduce neural nets back in 2004, 2005 into web scale ranking. And so that was a really good learning experience for me. And then this whole idea of experimentation in building systems and doing A/B testing at scale and trying to figure out if this improvement is working for better search results versus that improvement. All of those things was relatively new for the industry in those days. And so I learned some of that, co-developed some of those. At Google, I was responsible for a team that essentially built large-scale machine learning models for predicting the probability that somebody is going to click on an ad. So as you know, almost entirely all of Google's revenue comes from ad clicks, right? And my team was responsible for all the third-party ads, not the Google search ads, but all the other ads. So roughly 70% of Google's revenue flew through our models. And the revenue that comes from ads is entirely a function of how good a job we can do of estimating probability of click. So my small team of 10, 15 people was responsible for making algorithmic changes that would increase Google's revenue, like the 70% of Google's revenue, by a couple of percent every quarter. And so you can imagine the kind of numbers we're talking about. In those days, Google's revenue was around 10 billion and 7 billion flew through my models. And if we're able to get that 2% increase, that was essentially 2% of 7 billion added on top of Google's revenue for perpetuity. So this gave us really carte blanche to use as much resources as we could at Google and train AI models at unprecedented scale back then, like 2 orders of magnitude more than anything else anybody was doing. And really try lots and lots of different ideas of what could change that probability estimation and what could improve it, where we could bring features, where we could do hyperparameter tuning, things like that.
Got it. Amit, what year was that at Google?
So I joined Google 2007 and left in 2012. So fortunately or unfortunately, I left right when the renaissance of deep research was happening. And I was invited to be part of what became Google Brain and Google DeepMind eventually later to join. And that was when the startup bug caught me and I left to start ThoughtSpot.
Talking about ThoughtSpot, Amit, look, you were playing a very high impact role at Google. Amazing job to have, and I'm sure you were enjoying a lot. You were learning a lot. Then why ThoughtSpot? What was the founding story, and how did you arrive at the idea? And also, how did you meet Ajeet or co-found the company with Ajeet?
Yeah, so I'm of a strong belief that like if you seek something from the universe, you should just let the universe know. And sometimes the universe just comes and presents the right opportunity. So I guess it's hard to. It was in those days hard to work at Google and not be inspired by the story of Google founders and want to do something. And what had happened was I just kind of decided that I was not going to pursue my lifelong dream of becoming a professor. And so there was a void to be filled. And the next best thing that came to my mind was starting a company. So I really wanted to start a company. And I was talking to potential co-founders. I was trying out different ideas. But when I look back, I really had no idea how to start a company, how to even think about starting a company. And so all my ideas in retrospect look like very naive and kiddish. But I told a bunch of my friends that I was looking to do this. And one of those friends is Dheeraj, and his co-founder Ajeet, who also, so Dheeraj, Ajeet, and I all went to IIT Kanpur, so we kind of knew each other. But I think Dheeraj might have told Ajeet that I'm looking for co-founders, and Ajeet was looking for co-founders. So he reached out, and that's when we teamed up. And as far as idea is concerned, I think all of the credit goes to Ajeet. Before Nutanix, he was head of product for Astra Data, which was a distributed in-memory database company that got acquired by Teradata. And in those days, he had dreamed about building a distributed in-memory database. And that was around 2012. Tableau and Qlik were both really hot companies. And if we looked at Gartner survey of CIOs, and analytics was one of the top 3 things on CIO's mind. And what we realized was that in those days, the biggest marketing that Tableau and Qlik had was this in-memory analytics thing. It wasn't about visualization. It wasn't about ease of use. It was really saying that most of the analytics happens based on disk-based databases, and it's slow and clunky. But if your data is small enough, you can just put it in your desktop's memory, and you can drag and drop and build whatever report you want. And what we're seeing was this Google style building large-scale distributed system hadn't hit the enterprise market yet. Most of the enterprise solutions were not distributed scale-out solutions. And slowly these ideas were coming out of Google and making its way. So for example, Nutanix essentially took the GFS idea, Google File System idea, and made it accessible to enterprises. And so the idea was, what if we could build a large-scale distributed system that is essentially a distributed in-memory database, and then build analytics on top of it? Then you won't have this limited 100 million row limit that's there in Tableau or Qlik, and you could go scale to billions and billions of rows. So that was actually the initial kernel of the idea, that we could build really fast distributed in-memory database, and memory is cheap enough that we could do that now. But once we started building the analytics on top of it, we obviously didn't want to do what Tableau and Qlik were doing, which was drag and drop. We wanted something way better. And so we started dreaming what would be way better. And the kind of the obvious answer and very ambitious answer that came to us was business users should be able to just ask in the language that they can think of, almost like they use Google. And so the question was, is it really doable? And the resounding answer was no. And then we kind of took some time to figure out how we could constrain the problem so that it could be done. And it could be done in a way that business users could trust the answer, because trust is probably the most important part of analytics. And so it took me, like, I kind of went in a hole, and I disappeared for like month and a half. And then I came back with the very first version of our Searchlight interface. And when that started working, we knew that we had like lightning in a bottle in our hands, and we were ready to go.
Amit, walk us through the early days, and also what was that inflection point at ThoughtSpot where, it gave you a lot of confidence that the possibilities are massive from now on?
So I think this search-based experience was so new and so refreshing and so different from anything else that people had seen. We would go and show demos to people, and the literal response was, our jaws are on the floor. And it was really pleasant and surprising for 2 reasons. One, we had optimized our database to be so good and so fast that you could scan 1 billion rows and come back in 50 to 100 milliseconds. And 2, this whole idea of expressing your intent in query in natural language, and within like half a second, seeing that turned into SQL queries, seeing that run in a database, result come back, visualization picked for you, and the whole thing visualized. People were like, this is like out of the world kind of technology. I remember one of our co-founders had gone to India for a few weeks, and he came back, and for the first time he saw, and he was like, we're done. uh, so that was kind of that was the internal moment, and then we found the first design partner and showed it to them, and they were like, our jaws are on the floor, and we'll go to conference after conference and we'll repeatedly get that response. In fact, the response we'll get was that of disbelief, that you must be pulling a trick over us. This cannot be true.
Mhm. Got it. Yeah, fast forward to today, it seems like you have, customers like Walmart, Apple, and I think the company is valued at about 4.2 billion. Amit, what was the hardest thing
Mhm.
about building ThoughtSpot?
So we have had our struggles and we've made our mistakes. I think the single biggest thing for us was we had so in 2013 14, when we were hitting the market, we had such a amazingly differentiated product that lots of people wanted to talk to us. Business users really loved the idea, but we were having a hard time convincing their IT counterparts, because we had built the system with the assumption that data mart is a thing where people are willing to move data from their data warehouse into another database just to serve a particular analytics use case. But that thinking was going away, and everybody was talking about, we want single source of truth and no more copying data anywhere. It causes headaches in terms of ETL security and things like that. And we were insisting that our experience is so good that you should be willing to do it, and there's no other way to create such a good experience. And around the same time, and this was an era when we talked to enterprise customers about cloud and moving their data to cloud, they would say, over my dead body. But in the next 3-4 years, there was a rapid movement to cloud, and Redshift was the fastest growing product at Amazon, and Snowflake was growing like crazy, and Looker on top of Snowflake was growing like crazy. And we missed the writing on the wall, and we were busy selling this form factor of putting the software on an appliance and selling into enterprises. And we were signing $1 million deals and stuff like that. So there was good reason to do that, but we missed the train by a few years. And I think those years were very, very critical. So recovering from that and going so our first large user conference happened in 2018, and we talked to users, and the writing was on the wall that we had to move to cloud solution. We have to have a SaaS solution. So going from there and building something within 3 months, launching that as a SaaS solution, was probably one of the hardest thing to pull off. And like going from there to becoming essentially what ThoughtSpot is today.
Got it. Amit, talking about your new venture now,
Yeah.
AmpUp, how did you come up with the idea? What problem are you looking to solve through AmpUp?
Yeah. So there's two things. So one, being a startup founder that's trying to figure out how to get better and better product market fit and how to grow revenue faster, you're always looking at sales. You're always talking to salespeople. You're always talking to customers and looking at the data to figure out what's working, what's not working. So I did that for a good part of like 7-8 years. And this was a problem in the back of my mind. that was worth solving. One of so the problem was how do you figure out what's working and what's not working, and how do you take what's working and scale it as a system so that everybody does what's working. Right? The other thing, so one of the reasons why ThoughtSpot's AI agents for taking users' intent and turning that into query and results works way better than anybody else is because the last 2 years I was working on this product, I put all the focus of the team on building an interface that allows you to learn nuances in data and in metadata from business users and make the agent continuously improving. So, for example, if I ask the question, how many opportunities did we add this quarter from Salesforce data? The definition of this quarter should attach to creation date. But if I say how many opportunities are we going to win, or did we win this quarter, the definition of this quarter should attach to close date. This is the kind of information that the person who's writing these queries knows like back of their hand, but it's never documented anywhere. You cannot really figure it out until that person tells you. And so the solution we had was that when you ask this kind of question, we built an intermediate language layer that takes this input and translates that into something deterministic, precise, but yet close to natural language. So it will say top 10, or no, it will say count opportunities where creation date is in this quarter or something like that. And instead of creation date, if it said close date, then the business user will actually know that this is a mistake, and they can tell the system that this is a mistake and this is why it is a mistake. And if you can capture that learning, not only can you guarantee that you give the right answer to the business user, you will never make that mistake again. And it's easier said than done. It took a lot of time and effort to make this feedback loop working. But this is the fundamental piece that makes ThoughtSpot substantially better than anything else out there. And so what I wanted to do was take this idea and generalize it to arbitrary agent building, where you could take all the nuances in a business user's head and feed that into an AI agent and have a process where you can continuously learn that. So we were trying to figure out where to apply this idea with the maximum benefit. And what we realized was that of all the various departments, sales is a lot more art than science. Like the best salespeople are really magicians, and they kind of know when to push, when to pull back, when to go ask for help, and how to craft the questions, how to craft the narrative, and all of these things. And this is probably one of the best places to apply this idea, where you can take all the nuances in somebody's head and put that into a system that can go and help everybody else. In like the statistic that we talk about is that 30% of the revenue, 70% of the revenue is generated by top 30% of salespeople. So imagine if you can uplift the rest of the 70% to the same level, you're talking about 2 to 3x gain in revenue. Not only that, most of the times why a CEO or a CRO will hesitate to aggressively grow their sales team is because they don't know the next set of salespeople they hire, whether they will be able to perform or not for next 6 to 9 months. And so they're spending all this money and they don't know predictably whether they're going to get a return on that or not. So if you can shrink that predictability problem, then you can grow much faster. And so that's kind of the high level idea behind AmpUp. The way we are making it work is essentially we will look at all the call transcripts, we'll look at all the communication, we'll look at all the internal material, like your sales collateral, your website and everything. And then we'll figure out what's working, what's not working. And then we'll surface the right support for your sales team at the right time. at every stage of the deal. So we can look at the entire picture and tell you, these are the deals you should be focusing on right now. And for this deal to work out, you should, in the next meeting, you should be having a conversation about who's the economic buyer, where does the budget come from, what are the metrics that you're trying to move during this POC. In this next conversation, you should try and get a meeting with this person, and so on and so forth. And then give them the ability to simulate their next meeting through using a role-playing agent, so that all of these things are kind of crafted just in time for you based on all the context that's available. Give you content that will resonate well with the customer, that's crafted based on all the context that's available. So it's a system of execution for sales teams to elevate the execution across the board.
Very interesting, Amit. Me being a salesperson, I can totally, find value in what you're building. And Amit, talking about India, you've been involved in the Indian tech ecosystem. I think a good chunk of your engineering team at ThoughtSpot was in India. In fact, one of your marquee products came out of R&D in India. I'm forgetting the name. Tell us a bit about how are you involved in the Indian tech ecosystem, and also what excites you the most about the tech ecosystem in India?
Yeah, so even my current company, half of the engineering team is in Bangalore and is growing faster than the US team. So very much love working with the Indian tech ecosystem. They're amazing people there. And obviously we all have roots there. So that's the motivation too. I think what I'm most excited about is the rapid growth of talent base. So 10 years ago, when we started ThoughtSpot India, we were trying to hire top tier systems talent and AI talent in Bangalore. And it was a bit of a struggle. There were not that many people. The larger Indian tech ecosystem was still kind of getting trained in e-commerce companies and things like that. And there wasn't that much deep systems thinking or deep like AI machine learning kind of thinking available outside of pockets of Google and Microsoft and stuff like that. But today, there's so many amazing systems companies coming out of India. There's so many successful American companies have their engineering being done over there. And there's been a decade of like mentoring and training and building a network of experts that has completely leveled the playing field as in terms of like hiring in Silicon Valley versus India. And so that's really, really exciting. And the other thing that has happened is, one of the things that has happened with LLMs is that it's another kind of leveling of playing field. I feel like 20 years of building AI systems, all of a sudden within 1 year became somewhat irrelevant. And at certain level, sort of my intuitions and ideas around how a probabilistic system works and how to do like use benchmarks and evals and iterative refinement still applies, but rest of like how you think through the math of stochastic gradient descent and how do you do feature modeling and stuff like that has completely become irrelevant. So like a fresh college grad can think about how to prompt an LLM almost as good as I can, maybe even better. And so that also creates an opportunity for, Indian ecosystem, tech ecosystem to like bridge the gap or be better than the kind of talent that you can find here.
Yeah. Amit, there's a topic going on. In fact, a lot of high credible folks have said that 90% of the code will be written by AI.
Mhm.
Do you agree with that? If not, what's your view on that?
So there is kind of two things that you need to look at. One is that there's an there's a level of abstraction that's moving up in terms of how you write code, right? So, like in 70s, people were writing assembly language, and then we moved to C and C++, and then we moved to Java and then Python. So every generation goes through the next layer of abstraction, and that allows you to produce a lot more software, a lot more useful software than before. You also lose a little bit of control, and you need a much smaller set of people who can go into lower levels of abstraction and tweak things. Like there's still people who can write CUDA kernels better than anybody else, and they are extremely valuable. And there are people who can write optimized assembly for Intel instruction set or AMD 64 instruction set, and they're valuable, but we don't need too many of those. Right? So in some sense, we are going to start writing, or we are already writing software at a high level of abstraction. But that does not absolve you of the responsibility to think through all the use cases, all the corner cases, how the thing is architected, and how one component talks to other. How do you take a high level problem and break it down into different levels of abstraction and things like that? So where things stand today, you can certainly operate at a level of abstraction higher than just like writing a lot of boilerplate code, right? You can, but it doesn't mean that you can vibe code your way into building a robust system. I think the utility of vibe coding, I love vibe coding, but the utility of vibe coding is spinning up quick prototypes so that it becomes almost like a communication medium. A lot of times, I used to spend like writing 5-10 pages, like hours writing 5-10 pages of PRD. And now I spend that time just building mocks in an LLM or in a vibe coding platform. And that's a much better way to communicate to my team, whether engineering or design a product team, that this is the product I am hoping to build. So that's vibe coding. But the real system building, I think it gives a lot of legs to the engineers. They can move much faster. They can produce a lot more code. But I also see like junior engineers relying too much on vibe coding and producing complete mess. Now, having said that, that's the current state. Things are progressing rapidly, and the mistakes that the LLMs are making today, they will make fewer and fewer mistakes. And I mean, so the way I think about this is that maybe there's a future where we have ASI and almost everything can be done by machines. And at that point, we can all go to the beach and sip Mai Tai and not worry about anything. We'll have so much abundance, right? But until then, there's always going to be higher and higher value things that you can do by using these things as tools. And so it's not even worth talking about the world where we have ASI as engineers, what we're going to do. But till we have not reached there, it's just like you're getting more and more powerful tools, and you just have to be very good at learning how to use those tools and then produce the maximum value.
Got it. Amit, you've had an incredible journey in the US, right, in your professional career. And typically, in our journey, there are many people who have kind of helped us through our journey.
Yeah.
What's the kindest thing someone has done for you that really changed your trajectory in your professional career in the US?
Yeah, so it would have to be my PhD advisor, Adnan Aziz. If he hadn't decided to invest in me, I don't think I would have done a PhD, or I would have gotten the opportunity to do a PhD. And I the years that I worked with him, I learned so much about how to take a real life problem and start abstracting and turn that into an abstract problem, and then modeling that mathematically and solving it. It's been one of the strongest tools in my tool bag. And I actually, when a month after I arrived in US, me and a bunch of my friends had a terrible car accident where we were lucky to be alive after that. And I was in a full body suit for the next 6 months. And that was a time when it was just make or break for my life. It could have been that like either I didn't survive that period or I was forced to go back to India and spend time with my family. But there's incredible amount of kindness from a whole bunch of people, including my advisor, a bunch of my friends. One of my friend's elder brother took me and my friend in their house, and we stayed with them for a month while they had a newborn in the house.
Wow.
And I was so damaged, like nerve damage and stuff, that I wasn't able to swallow solid food. So they would take food, they will blend it and give me, like feed me sort of liquefied food and like give me all kinds of support, take me to the doctor's office when I needed. And that's probably the kindest thing anybody could do by a mile.
Yeah. And Amit, you wrote a book. Like your professor DNA kind of like came into that, and it helped a lot of engineers get amazing job at amazing tech companies. What is the book about, and why did you write that book?
Yeah. So the book is called Elements of Programming Interviews. It's written, the three versions of that book for C++, Python, and Java. Originally, that book was called Algorithms for Interviews, and I co-wrote it with my advisor. So I love problem solving and puzzles, and I was always collecting these kinds of problems all the time. And I had a collection building. And one of the turning points for me in my life was one of my friends sent me to a 3-day course, which was about how to live your life more powerfully. And towards the end of that course, they pushed us to think about what would really inspire you and what would be a project that you could take on that you would feel like you're doing fulfilling things. And as I was racking my brain, I was like, I love puzzles and I've helped a number of people prepare for their job interviews. What if I could turn that into something that lots and lots of people could use? And so I started outlining the thing. I had enough of an idea that I knew this was going to be a reality. And then I went to my advisor, who also loves these kinds of problems. So I asked him if he wants to co-write with me. And so it became a joint project over the next 2 years or so. We wrote the first version, which is Algorithms for Interviews. And then it became a pretty massive project. So he recruited one of his other students as well. And so it turned into, one book turned into 3 books. And
Love it. Amit, we'll move to our final section. I had, told you about my co-pilot. I gave you a bit of a warning. He's asking, we know Amit as a technologist, as an entrepreneur, as an author. What do people, or what do Amit's friends know Amit for?
So I love collecting jokes and telling jokes. So I'm not a comedian or I'm not a writer. I don't write jokes, but I'm always in search of like interesting, funny jokes. And whenever I meet my friends, one of the first things we do is exchange jokes.
Yeah. Love it. And Amit, outside of work, what are you most obsessed about or excited about in general?
Um, I think the most fun I have outside of work is usually with my daughter.
Mhm.
She's 12 years old and she's full of life and energy, and seeing life through her eyes, helping her learn new things, pick up new skills, has been probably the most rewarding thing outside of work.
Mhm.
Um, she is so she's learning to code. She's like, we often go on long bike trips together. We'll like sometimes try to make a short movie together and all kinds of fun things.
Mhm. Yeah, love it. Amit, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing your journey with us. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for the invite. It was a fun conversation, and love the podcast.